toxic algae and bacteria.
It's caused massive fish kills.
Fueled by a changing climate.
We've lost a lot of businesses. We've got businesses trying to cope and change.
California's most popular lakes in danger.
Now you can see some of the cyanobacteria over by the docks.
What can be done to stop the threat?
Unless we make subtle changes, our kids won't have the ability to change things back.
This is California's Dying Lakes, an ABC10 Weather Impact Team investigation. I'm ABC10 Chief Meteorologist Monica Woods with the Weather Impact Team, Brendan Minchef, Carly Gomez, and Rob Karamark. Over the next half hour, we'll be uncovering why some of California's lakes are dying.
Warming temperatures and a changing climate are giving algae and bacteria the upper hand.
So we're looking at what part history plays and the solutions that are on the table.
We start north of Sacramento in Lassen County at Eagle Lake, where I found that docks are sitting on dirt, not water.
Eagle Lake has been my heart and soul since birth.
Valerie Aubrey devotes her life to Eagle Lake in Northern California's high desert.
We were camping here basically before any of the campgrounds were paved or anything like that. So it just became home.
As a fishing tour guide for more than 20 years and a member of the nonprofit Eagle Lake Guardians, Aubrey blogs about the issues plaguing the once vibrant lake.
With the drought, with the water changing and such, we have very warm water. You know, last time I checked it, I had 70.8 to 30 feet.
70-degree water temperatures at a 5,100-foot elevation. Because Eagle Lake sits on the leeward side of the lower Cascade Mountain Range, it sees more sunlight and less snow.
Fredonia Peak up there is almost 8,000, and it holds snow nicely, but it's a sharp drainage into the lakes.
Stan Bales with the Bureau of Land Management says the lake's level continues to drop over the 50 years he's helped manage it.
Because of the warmth of the summer and the winds, you get 3 to 5 feet of loss every year. So you have to balance that with recharge, and if you don't, then the lake just gets smaller and smaller.
And recharging or naturally refilling Eagle Lake is hard. The lake relies on one source for runoff. Pine Creek connects the snowpack in nearby mountains to Eagle Lake.
When you get a good snowpack and a good runoff year coming off Lassen Park, it'll flow in here and help recharge Eagle Lake.
The lake is a closed basin. Only water goes in, but not out. That was until the 1920s. Adding to the lake's dropping levels was the Bly Tunnel.
The intent was to take Eagle Lake water and then sell the water through a canal system to farmers, ranchers.
Little did they know, the water wasn't suited well for agriculture. Eagle Lake and surrounding Susanville and Lassen are made of volcanic rock. This rock puts a lot of alkalinity in the water, leaving the pH balance too high for certain crops to absorb nutrients and grow.
Because that tunnel did drain a lot of water out of Eagle Lake, the lake got much lower, and some people who loved Eagle Lake were not happy with that.
Eventually, a concrete plug was installed. An argument over water rights were filed by landowners, and only a small amount of water was released through a valve.
So eventually our BLM manager agreed to shut the valve on that plug.
Docks like these at Eagle Lake Marina used to be common until a series of drought dropped water levels 10 feet. Now these docks are unusable.
It was quite the booming place in its day. It has deteriorated quite a bit.
The south side is the main part of the lake, now able to accommodate boaters. The Bureau of Land Management says the water quality from the middle to north sides of the lake have been hit the hardest.
But if you look where the grass ends and the dark soil begins, it's really decayed algae. And algae grows on the bottom of the lake, what we call Windsurfer Beach right here. We'd have anywhere from 10 to 20, 30, even 40 people up here on a Sunday afternoon, and some people would come and camp.
Paul Devine with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife says algae growing in shallow water across the lake is impacting other water activities.
That's been really noticeable, especially with anglers, because they complain about the algae being caught on their lines and they have to reel their stuff in and clean it off before they can catch a fish. So this one is 3/4 of a pound.
Conservation strategies are underway to save Eagle Lake trout.
From the 1900s to the 1960s maybe, There is 11 different species of fish planted into Eagle Lake, and none of them have survived to today, so we only have the native fish.
Devine says Eagle Lake trout don't mind higher temperatures and pH levels. Their genetics have adapted so well to changes in Eagle Lake that the trout are now being used to help warming lakes all over the world.
There's other states as well as Canada. I've heard as far as New Zealand having Eagle Lake trout.
As warming conditions continue, causing lake levels to further drop and algae to grow, Eagle Lake will likely never be able to reach the water levels it was at a century ago.
We've got businesses trying to cope and change, and we really want to support them in the coming, in the future to help them get going.
Eagle Lake is just one of more than 3,000 lakes in California, and their health is in jeopardy.
Part of this is rooted in how they were created.
And part how they've been re-engineered.
I traveled to Clear Lake to see how people are using Western science and native practices to keep this lake alive. The love for Clear Lake runs deep for longtime resident and business owner Debbie Clark.
I've been coming here since I think I was 3. As soon as Memorial Weekend started, that's when it would go from 1,000 people to 15,000 people in one weekend.
Since then, the population in Lake County has more than tripled, but Debbie says it still feels like a close-knit community.
It just seems like everybody wants to help each other out. It's a very small place.
One neighbor even working on revitalizing an old boat slip with hopes of making this a place to swim and fish, if he can find a way to keep out a dangerous bacteria growth.
Now you can see some of the cyanobacteria over by the docks, right where the garden was, and the wind had come in and blew some of that in.
That wind on the north side of the lake also stirring up sediment containing phosphorus, which promotes the bacterial blooms.
The cyanobacteria basically form originally at one end of the lake where the phosphorus is hot. It moved down to this end of the lake because of the winds. When they die, they release the phosphorus down here.
This weather pattern, along with Clear Lake's geographic history, create a perfect breeding environment for harmful bacteria. The lake was shaped over a period of almost 2 million years from faulting, tilting, erosion, and even volcanism. Mount Konocti still standing high as a reminder of this ancient activity. Eruptions from this ring of volcanoes deposited high amounts of phosphorus near the lake.
It's 10 times higher than the phosphorus in the average of the rest of the United States. So now we have high phosphorus soils in certain areas of the county. When you get rainstorms, it washes off into the lake.
The combination of elevated phosphorus levels and high temperatures reduces the oxygen in the lake, giving cyanobacteria an opportunity to grow and the upper hand over fish and other organisms.
Some of the ways to treat this bacteria, at least on the south side of the lake, is to inject it with oxygen or put on a chemical that would keep the phosphate from coming to the surface. The other option, head to where it all begins, at the north side of the lake.
Martin Duncan is a Pomo tribal member and has a long history here.
Bloody Island, a massacre that happened in 1850, and my I call her Nika, my great-great-grandma, she was a survivor of that.
Hiding in the tule weeds until she thought it was safe to come out. Over the years, those tules were removed along with precious floodplains that helped keep the lake in a natural balance. Decades later, Martin is now working to replant those tules and the lake's natural ecosystem.
Tule's life to me. If it wasn't for them sacrificing their life, I wouldn't be here.
This, along with work to restore the floodplain, is work the Robinson Rancheria Environmental Center is hoping will reduce unhealthy runoff by integrating native practices with Western science.
The on-the-job stuff that I learned from tribal members really helped me kind of connect Western science with cultural practices, and it made things much clearer when it comes to management and trying to advocate for different policies.
But Luis says applying this practice to Clear Lake is challenging.
Because of my kind of Western science background and being able to work for the state and the feds at different levels, you could kind of just tie everything together.
making arguments to fund conservation and restoration efforts despite the disconnect between tribal, county, state, and federal policies, in part by having elected officials that are also tribal members to help bridge the gap.
I got to go to the Office of Tribal Governments for California, where Governor Newsom was right there. As a supervisor, I don't get to have that opportunity to be in the room with him at times.
EJ also serves on a national advisory committee for the Environmental Protection Agency, another way to connect government and Native communities. Those connections helping to push forward efforts like the Middle Creek Restoration Project.
That provides so much for this habitat ecosystem. It is an area where you can have a marshland, so that way it collects the sediment and all the nutrient load that comes from the hills and whatnot that runs off into the creeks.
From native practices and putting more voices at the table,
I think more so than before, there's progress.
To Western science.
With a little bit of teasing here and learning how to treat this lake, I believe actually, because I want to believe it, that we can clear this up within just a few decades.
It's going to be something. I'm hopeful.
A community buy-in to keep Clear Lake clear. From Clear Lake, now to the largest alpine lake in North America. Lake Tahoe is challenged with keeping the water blue,
even when constantly testing for both water quality and clarity.
But there are fears that could change in the future, highlighting the need to take action now.
I visited the iconic crystal clear water of Tahoe to see why a warming climate is the biggest challenge to keeping Tahoe blue.
We really rely on the science to figure out what is happening in the lake.
Laura Patton is the Natural Resource Director at the League to Save Lake Tahoe, better known as Keep Tahoe Blue. Patton and other scientists say climate change and recreation are the lake's biggest threats.
We are seeing different impacts from things like air temperature, water temperature, precipitation patterns.
Lake Tahoe is world-renowned for its blue coloring, and there's bumper stickers all over the region that says to keep it that way. But climate change poses a myriad of threats to the lake, so we're asking the question, could Tahoe turn green?
Tahoe's crystal blue water is actually clear. The clear water reflects the blue sky and absorbs red light, making these brilliant hues of blue.
Climate change is absolutely the largest threat to Lake Tahoe's water quality.
She's referring to longer and hotter periods of heat, longer fire seasons, and more erratic storms.
When we think about Lake Tahoe's water quality and the threats that are impacting the water quality today, there are a number of them, and they're interactive. And so we're adding species to the lake unintentionally and often illegally, and those species can reorganize how nutrients are given to algae that grow at the edge of the lake.
Dr. Sudeep Chandra is the director of the University of Nevada's Global Water Center, researching freshwater lakes from Southeast Asia to the Eastern Sierra. Algae most often forms in warm and relatively calm waters. Excess nutrients like nitrogen and phosphorus enter the lake via agricultural or stormwater runoff and can act as fertilizer for algae and bacteria growth. Not all algae is toxic though, but when it is, it can be extremely harmful to the ecosystem. Caution signs even line Tahoe's shores when toxic algae overgrowth, known as harmful algal blooms, is detected. Scientists say when a harmful algal bloom happens, options to fight it can be limited. It's more beneficial to stop blooms before they happen.
One thing that we really focus on is actually the prevention of the spread of aquatic invasive plant species. Aquatic invasive plant species make their way primarily through boats. They can also make their way into Tahoe through something like a paddleboard or a kayak. So we really encourage everybody to clean, drain, and dry.
Boat inspections have been mandatory at the lake since 2008, and permanent inspection stations are being placed on both the California and Nevada sides of Tahoe to help keep invasive species out. In 2021, when the Caldor fire raced towards South Lake Tahoe, Dr. Chandra says its smoke impacts were not really what you might expect.
Not all smoke is created equal. When you have fires, the Caldor fire, that heavy smoke and ash that's deposited closer to the fire turns out to be less reactive, and it doesn't grow as much algae. But the fine, thin particles further away from the fire that maybe make the beautiful sunsets that we see, they actually have a lot of nutrients and metals that can stimulate algae growth.
Wildfire smoke can also impact Lake Tahoe's water quality. Patton adds that the Truckee River, which carries sediment and other particle pollution into Lake Tahoe, also impacts the water quality.
The Upper Truckee River is the largest contributor to fine sediment pollution into Lake Tahoe, we're really focused on restoring marshes and meadows so that those can act as big filters. So the more restoration that we can do in Lake Tahoe, the more we can protect it and keep Tahoe blue.
And the federal government is helping. Congress just reauthorized the Lake Tahoe Restoration Act, extending funding of about $300 million to protect Tahoe's water quality. Since 1997, hundreds of federal projects have restored wetlands, reduced forest fire fuels, and helped control invasive species. But still, more can be done.
I'm worried as a conservation scientist that unless we make some of these subtle changes, that in 10 or 20 years, our kids won't have the ability to change things back. And there are little things that we can do that would protect the lake in big ways into the future.
Innovation and collaboration will help California's dying lakes survive a changing climate.
For one lake community in Southern California, that's exactly what they're doing.
Creating an aggressive plan to turn their green lake blue again.
I traveled to Lake Elsinore and talked to both residents and key stakeholders about how they are creating a clearer future. Lake Elsinore is a place that has what you would want in a smaller town, a spot to drop in and stay a while. It has a quaint main street with trees that line brick blocks of a downtown with mom and pop shops, a barber shop with an old barber pole, and a classic popular dive bar called The Wreck. Is this still here?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's
No
up on the hill.
way. Lake Elsinore's Historical Society says all of this has been keeping people coming and staying since the 1800s. Celebrities like Steve McQueen and the original Dracula, Bela Lugosi, visited often for work and leisure. But the star of the town is the lake. It's the largest natural freshwater lake in Southern California. When the lake turned green with toxic cyanobacteria algae, like in this video from years past, the town turned upside down. Residents demanded that the city and Lake Elsinore's mayor, Steve Manos, fix the issue.
It tends to have this particular problem with cyanobacteria where the algae blooms come about each summer. In past years, it's caused massive fish kills, which then in turn cause other problems and feeds the ongoing annual problem of the algae blooms.
Lakes have different factors that aid algae growth. At Lake Elsinore, treated wastewater adds elements like phosphorus that helps algae grow. Hotter years with drought and warmer shallow water adds to more devastating blooms, like in March of 2023. The lake went through one of its most dangerous outbreaks of toxic green algae. The smell was unpleasant, and it was closed for months. Before the outbreak, the city spent millions of dollars upgrading businesses and boat launches. Those launches weren't used when the lake was closed.
They want to see something done, and no matter how difficult that is, they'd like to go ahead and see us make the effort.
Mayor Manos tasked the city council and others like Adam Guffarati to come up with a plan to save the lake.
We are really pushing hard to make changes now. Our residents deserve this. The region deserves a lake that they can swim in year-round.
The city passed a sweeping lake management plan during the lake's closure, and within months, they had the first pieces of a purification puzzle in place. Among the many things that the city of Lake Elsinore has tried to do in this lake to help the water quality is this floating nano bubbler, and they say they're already getting results. The barge keeps the nano bubbler in place, which emits very tiny bubbles in a test portion of the lake that are suspended in the water column instead of floating up. This process is designed to disrupt the typical lifestyle of algae growth and improve clarity. With the city's test bubbler and Mother Nature bringing rain over the winter, officials saw results within 1 year.
The next image, what you're seeing is actually this year. So you're seeing March 8th of 2024, and these are satellite images of the lake. You can drastically see the difference in color.
In March of 2024, people could see 16 feet under the surface of the lake, and good healthy algae was growing at the bottom for the first time.
People were posting photos, and other ones were like, that can't be Lake Elsinore.
Mayor Manos says their nano bubbler plan will expand and plans to spend $8 million more on larger nano bubblers.
Redemption, and certainly hope sprung anew. During the springtime, we saw some very clear water and very good results that I believe changed a lot of opinions as to what was possible.
For Lake Elsinore, this is a war on all fronts, and future years will likely be warmer with more droughts. Keeping phosphorus in check will also be a challenge. It's a big problem with no silver bullet, but people here are fighting for this little lake town to live in and save its history.
We all, as humans, deserve a place to swim and enjoy. We need that as part of our life. It's part of our mental health. We need a place to, stretch our legs and swim.
Thanks for watching our investigation into California's dying lakes.
Keep using the ABC 10 Plus app to watch more in-depth weather content, including our Emmy Award-winning special, Water Wasted.
And look for our extended forecast.
When severe weather hits, the ABC 10 Weather Impact Team is here to keep you prepared.